Hello, welcome to the second session of the watercolour course exploring cling film textures. In today's session we are going to be looking at moorland scenes, and I'm going to show you how to create some exciting textures using two different techniques. Okay, so in this first session I'm going to show you two different techniques, and the first technique I'm going to show you is creating a landscape but just applying the cling film to certain areas, but not dripping ink or anything underneath, hopefully. And the second technique is going to be a bit more of a wintry scene, and I'm going to apply some ink underneath the cling film. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the first technique with just the cling film first. Okay, so I've got my paper taped to the board. I've done a very light sketch. I've just outlined, I don't know if you could see that, I've just outlined a few little suggestions of some hills in the distance and a slice of land sort of in the front that I'm going to put the cling film on. Got my cling film ready, got my paints mixed up. I'm going to be using Prussian blue, a little bit of phthalo blue, some permanent rose and a little bit of yellow ochre. I'm going to try and create a sort of more an autumny sort of feel to this one. So get everything ready and then we're ready to start. Okay, before you start you want to do the sky area first of all. So you obviously need to decide what sort of mood you want to create and what sort of season. I'm going for more of an autumny feel for this one. I'm sort of golds and reds, I think, and I'm going to just do a bit of an impression of a sky. I'm not going to put too much detail in this sky, I don't think. Thoroughly wet the sky area up to where your hills are going to be. Okay, I'm going to use some very diluted Prussian blue. Just going to do some light washes in the sky area. Sorry, I got a bit of a blob there, that's what I was rubbing. There we are. And oops, a little bit more colour maybe, just a tiny bit more. Some areas, that's it. Just, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a little bit of tissue in a minute and just lift a little bit of this colour out. There we are. Get some tissue while it's still nice and wet, and just a little bit of tissue you can just press in to the paper, move it around. Get some clean tissue again, move it, otherwise you're putting paint back on rather than lifting it off. And I'm just getting suggestions of some clouds here in the sky. Do another little bit here. Start to dry now, so sort of reached just like that, as much as I can do. So hope you can see there, it's just given a little bit of suggestion of some clouds. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to this area here. If your sky is wet at all, you might need to dry that with a hairdryer, but because I've lifted that out, that's actually fairly dry there. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to use a Prussian blue. Just going to do a suggestion of some sort of hill shapes in here. I'm going to put a bit of a slightly darker colour on now, and then I'm going to wet it a bit more, get the colour to run down a little bit. Put a little bit more in some areas. Right, what I'm now going to do, I'm going to wet right down to here, this bottom bit down here, and then I'm going to come up and touch this paint to encourage that to run into my water. Okay, And now I'm going to hold the board at a bit of an angle and let that just trickle a little bit. So I'm going to get a bit of water just to let that to merge a bit more. That's it. And that should run and trickle a little bit. You can then lift it up to merge a bit more. Just putting some water on. That's, I've got a rather dark area there. And again, get that just to run down a tiny bit. And then go back there. Really, the idea is I'm trying to get the top of the hill to be darker than the bottom. But I don't want to sort of paint brush marks really, so I'm just trying to get that to be quite soft and flowy looking. There we are. That will do. If you want it to be a bit more soft and misty at the bottom, the other thing you can try is actually, like you did cloud, is actually while it's damp, you can just go in and just soften that edge a little bit if you want to. Just lift some of it out. Just a little bit, I won't go too mad. Let it run again. There. So I need to dry this off now with a hairdryer before I come on and do this bit, otherwise this bit will sort of obviously seep up into that top area, which is not what I want. So I need to go and get it all dry now, and then we can do the next section. Okay, so I have this now all dried off. So it's not, I know that my paint's not going to run up and seep into that area. It should be safe. So I'm now going to start painting this area. I'm going to do a sort of a darker Prussian blue just here. So it's going to be a suggestion of either a sort of craggy rocks or another distant hill. Then I'm going to start coming in with some yellow ochres and some permanent rose and add little touches of blue in there. So hopefully we'll get a few touches of green and purple. That's the plan. But this is always very much a sort of wait and see what happens sort of painting when you do it this way. So we just sort of, as long as you've got some idea of how the colours are going to mix, that's the main thing I think when you're doing this. So I'm just a little bit of darker colour just here, just there. Then I'm going to come in and actually start going in with some yellow ochre. So actually I just realised I haven't wet this paper at all, so I'm actually just going to, just a little bit, wet the paper just slightly, give me a bit more time, because I don't want it to still be wet when I put the cling film on, so that just gives you a bit more time to work. So there you go. So I'm going to come in and put a little bit of yellow ochre on. Okay. Got my cling film ready. can see I'm actually manipulating the paint slightly. As I'm going. So this blue, I'd like to sort of see if I can get that to merge a little bit. So I'm sort of squidging it with my finger a little bit. That's it. Oops. Just get one or two. Try and get a couple of maybe little lighter areas going on. A couple of places. Now, there we are. Right, so hopefully you can see that that has merged, and I've got some sort of patterns hopefully forming here. Just trying to switch that up a bit so it's not quite so uniform. That's better. Made it look a bit more craggy in at the top. Can you see? I've actually just squashed it a bit to make it look a bit more craggy. Now, okay, I'm going to go with that. Okay, and that's that one. Okay. Need to leave this one, put this one to one side and leave it to dry. I mean, if you do, I'm just going to say, if you do this and you think, oh dear, I'm not very happy with one section here. So for example, if I wanted to, I could very lightly just put another little bit of paint, let it run under the cling film. But the idea with this one is to try to just use the cling film if we can, all right, rather than using putting things under the cling film as well. But have a go and see how you get on. Put it to one side to dry overnight, and then we can always work back into it a little bit. I will show you how to do that in a bit. Okay, so this one is now dry. Left it dry overnight, taken the cling film off, and hopefully you can see you've got some nice sort of textural marks on there. But you can improve it. You don't always need to. Sometimes it looks lovely just as it is and you don't want to touch it, which is fine. But sometimes you could improve it by just tweaking it a little bit. And I'm just going to show you a couple that I've done previously. So this one here, hopefully you can see this. This was how it looked originally. And on this one here, what I have done, I have just lightened a couple of areas. I'm going to sort of point with the end of my brush. I hope you can see I can actually lightened a couple of areas by lifting out some paint in a few areas just to make a bit more variety. I've actually added a little bit more of the blue to a couple of these areas here to make them look a little bit more rocky, and darken this area here. And on the original, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, if I put this up to the camera, already there was a little sort of mark, a crease in where the cling film was, which suggested a sort of a mark of a path. So I just actually went with that and then lifted that out with a damp brush, just to give a suggestion of a little path going off and making it to look a little bit more like a landscape. This, I'm going to show you one more. This one here, this is, I haven't done so much to this one actually. This one, all I have done, some of the blue, I have just gone in and just darkened a few of the bluer areas just here to make them look a little bit more rocky. And this burnt sienna colour, all I've done, I've actually just then come and actually put a little bit more across on some of the areas, so it was a bit more integrated because it looked like a little bit of a patch all on its own. So I'm just going to show you the original and now this one. So hopefully you can see that I've just put a little bit more of the burnt sienna across, just so it's sort of brings the eye across, and I've darkened up a little bit of the blue. All right, so let's go back to this one. What I think I might do on this one is I'm just going to maybe lift out a couple of little bits on this little bit here, with a damp brush and a tissue, and then I maybe just darken off a couple of little areas here to make them look a little bit more like rocky areas, or to make them stand out a little bit. So I'm just going to get myself ready and get back to you. Right. Okay, so I've just got some clean water and a little brush and a piece of kitchen roll, and I'm just starting to lighten a couple of areas. All I'm doing is getting a damp brush and sort of scrumbling away at one little section at a time, because you don't want to lose all your lovely shapes, but I'm just wanting to make a bit more variety in there. I mean, you may love it as it is, so this is not, I'm not saying this is necessary, this is just an option, okay? Something, if you're not happy, you can actually just go in and just refine it slightly. So you want to go in and then take the paint off basically with your tissue, and get a clean bit of tissue to lift off the next section. All right, I'm just doing a bit. I'm not going to do the whole thing. It just lifts it a little bit, and it's going to get a bit more variety, I think. A bit here. So I'm just going to work away a little bit more at that, and then I'll come and show you what I've done. Okay, so I've gone in and just lightened a few areas. I've just lifted out the paint with a damp brush and sort of dabbed it with a tissue. Hopefully you can see that it's giving it a little bit more texture and a bit more interest. Now I'm going to work on the foreground, and I just go with what's there already. All right, so I've got a little bit here where I've got some blue marks. What I might do is I'm going to emphasize those so that looks more like a craggy rock, and I've got a naturally occurring sort of crease mark here, so I might actually just emphasize the edge of that a little bit so it looks like another little hillock or hill coming down in the foreground. I don't want to do too much to spoil it. I don't want to make it too fiddly, but just going to add a little tiny touch of the original Prussian blue in here. Just going to come in, and the marks are already there. All I'm doing is just going to go and beef them up a little bit. And I'm just going to soften that colour down a little bit. Just emphasising that shape a little bit so it looks a little bit more rocky looking. And I might just bring that out. There's nothing, that's just a white patch there, so what I might do is actually just put a little bit of paint, not too much, just a little wash of colour in there, just to blend it in a little bit. Just don't want it to be too there. You can see that that's now just come in and actually just emphasize that. You see, now that just brings it and makes something of it, that's something that was already there, but you're just making a bit more of it, emphasizing some things and sort of taking out other areas that aren't so interesting. Get a bit more colour in there. Okay, just want a bit more colour. I don't want to be too mad. Okay, right. Now this area here, I can come in and actually just add a little bit. I'm going to sort of go in and add a sort of slightly purpley colour here, I think. All right, so right, just come in and just emphasise some of these shapes just a little bit more. Don't do too much because the colours are lovely, and it's sort of, you don't want to spoil what's there. Just adding a little bit more. Right. Now the other thing you can do with that, I've got no paint on my brush at all now, I've just got water. What you can do is actually if you actually just wet the paint slightly, you can actually just make it a little bit more prominent as well by just merging the colours a little bit. That's just, as you can hopefully see, just made that a little bit more what was there already. Now I need to think if I do want to do anything else. The other thing I thought I might be able to do with this one, and again I say obviously you don't want to make it too fiddly and spoil the nice, I quite like the sort of spontaneity of the texture there, just suggesting something rather than being definite. So I've just, as you can see, I might just make that little bit there just a tiny bit darker. I could actually make a little bit more of some of these pink areas, because I thought they sort of would suggest heather. That was the idea of these colours. I was going to hopefully suggest the idea of heather and gorse growing with the pinks and the yellows. You just sort of see, I've just emphasised that. I might just make a little bit more, this little bit here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my lovely pink that I had originally, come back in, and I'm just going to work in here. So I'm just going to add a little few touches of pink in here. I just fiddle a little bit, and then I'll come back and I'll show you. Okay, so this is the finished image. I didn't do too much to it actually. I didn't need to on this one. So what I've done, I've just gone in and emphasised a few of these little pink areas just here and here. So I'll just go through this one more time. What I've done, I've just lifted out some of the colours from here, and then I've actually darkened here, put a little bit of purple here, and just emphasise a little bit of the pink. Might hold that up just a bit more. That's all you need. You don't want to do too much and lose the sort of textures that you've got, but it's just sort of playing and seeing if you can, just if you need to. You might, I say it might look lovely just as it is, but I'll just say if it doesn't, then you can just tweak it a little bit. Okay, so have a go. And next I'm going to show you using a similar, we're going to do something similar, but this time we're going to put either a little bit of paint or ink under the cling film and let it trickle and run. Okay. Okay, for the second technique, I've got a slightly larger piece of paper. I'm going for A4 this time. That's just because I'm allowing myself a little bit more room to manoeuvre, but that's up to me. I've just very lightly sketched a little line of a hill here, here and here. My idea is I'm going to have three main hills. The distant one I'm just going to try and let it do wet in wet and let the paint run. The second one I'm going to put a little bit of cling film on, but then I'm going to go and put much more texture on the front one. I haven't decided yet. I may put ink or paint under both sections, but I'm going to just see what it looks like when I put the cling film on. I may just put it on the front section to make it more prominent. Okay, so first of all, obviously we need to get the sky done. I'm going to be just using two colours today. I'm going to be using burnt sienna and phthalo blue. Okay, so I'm just going to thoroughly wet the sky area first. Got a bit of tissue ready so I can lift out a few clouds as well. Okay, I've got some phthalo blue, but I need to dilute it a little bit because it's incredibly strong. I'm just diluting it too little. I'm just coming in, just putting in some quite loose washes. Okay, I need to get a bit of tissue and just come and lift out little cloud shapes. Need to be sort of speedy for this really, to before the paint dries. Come in. Let's see if I can lift out a few in the middle here as well. There, that'll do. There. That's just impressions, light impressions, a few clouds. Okay, so I'm going to dry that, then come in and start doing the hills. Okay, so I've dried the sky area. I'm now going to work on the back hill here. And what I'm actually going to do with this one, I'm actually going to wet I'm going to wet the paper a little bit first, up to where I want the paint to go. Just this first section, and I'm going to work section by section on this one. Just lightly wet that and come in and start adding some colours. So I'm going to come in and add some lovely burnt sienna. Only adding, going to come from the bottom up with this one. Quite pale colour to start with. Then I'm going to come in and build on that. Okay, so I'm now going to come in with some of the blue. Some of the nice what I'm going to start doing, I'm going to start letting the paint run a little bit. So I'm going to tilt it this way, the way I want the paint to run that direction. All right, so I'm going to get some of my paint, just going to get some of the blue and just encourage it just to run a little bit. Just come in and encourage it to run downwards. Oops. Okay, so I've dried this section off. Now I'm going to work on this section here. Okay, so again I'm going to wet it first. Wetting it up to where I want it to run, which is, I've got a line sort of around here. Okay, so same colours again. I'm going to use a combination of phthalo blue and burnt sienna. Right, I'm going to come in with the cling film now. So I've got a bit of cling film ready. So I'm going to place that over this section here. And I'm just tweaking it a little bit while it's still nice and wet. Hopefully you can see I've got some quite nice textures going on there. I'll just see if I can lift this a little bit up here, just a tiny bit. I'd quite like some bit more shape going upwards. That's it. Hoping I want to get the fold of the cling film sort of following the contours of the hill a little bit if I can. That was the sort of plan. Okay, I think that will do. Just lift that edge just a tiny bit. Right. Now, I can just see a couple of dry areas, so what I'm going to do, I'll grab my brush, and I'm just here. I can see that's all dried off, so I'm just going to re-wet that a little bit. So hopefully I'll get a bit of shape on there, rather than it being completely flat. And again at the tops here, I can see right at the top. It's better. That's it, that's better. It's a bit, hopefully that will, paint will spread better under the cling film. There we are. Okay, that's that. Actually, I can just see here, can you see I've got a completely white area there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn it around. Can you see? No, you can't. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to re-wet there. I'm just going to put a little bit more paint underneath, just a tiny bit. That's better. That's better. And that's got rid of that little white bit. Okay, great. Okay, I'm leaving that. Now, I'm going to do this front section now. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. See what happens. Okay, cling film at the ready. Oh, it's always scary. Right, I'm now going to put this on. Now I'm just going to let it go and see what happens. See how I'm getting on with those. Do I like those shapes? At this stage, I'm just going to hold it up. You can sort of see sort of the sort of shapes you're getting. You can tweak it, as you know. You can lift areas, or you can sort of crease it up a little bit more with your fingers if you want to. I quite like that to be a little bit bigger there. Lift up a little bit, just here. There. Just lifting a couple of areas. So it's getting some quite nice shapes going on, so I don't want to play with it too much and spoil it. Quite liking some of this as it is. Right, okay, yeah, I like that as it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I do intend to put ink under here, but I am going to leave it, just put it to one side for 20 minutes, half an hour, then put the colour underneath, because I'm just going to show you what happened. I did one previously to this and it went a little bit wrong, and I'm going to show you what happened. Well, very wrong really. I'm going to show you what happened, and hopefully that will help you avoid doing it. So I'm just going to go and stop the camera a minute and go and grab that and show you. Okay, so here's my earlier version that's gone wrong, so I had to start again. And what I did with this one, I'm just going to point with my end of my brush so you can see. I'm going to hold it up hopefully so you can see this area here and here and here. I've got some, it's gone like big blobs, okay, rather than getting nice texture. So what happened here is, while the paint was still wet, straight away I started trickling some inks under. I put some white ink, but I also went in with a little bit of brown. And what happened, what happened with this one was, for some reason, well, not for some reason, because the paint was wet and the ink was there, the ink and the paint merged a little bit too much, and they started creating sort of muddy colours rather than getting the texture. So I could have tried to rectify this and try to scrub out areas and things, but I just thought it's going to get very complicated, and it's not giving you a very good template to show you what to do. I'm just going to show you, hopefully you can try and avoid doing that. So when I do this next one I'm going to show you, I'm going to be very, very tentative when I put the ink underneath, just a tiny bit at a time, and let it go, and then see if I need any more. Much better to put less rather than more and sort of ruin it, because particularly if it's ink, if it's paint, you can lift paint a little bit, but ink, once it's dry, you can't lift it. It's sort of water, not water soluble anymore. So I say this one I've just done, I'm just, as a precaution, I'm going to leave it half an hour, and then so it's just starting to dry a tiny bit, and then I'm going to come in with the ink, and hopefully that will help also avoid the two merging quite so much. Okay, so I've left this 20 minutes and I've come back to it, and I'm going to be really cautious this time. I'm a bit worried about messing this one up now, so I'm going to start off. I've decided to use some brown ink under here rather than any white, so I'm going to use two different browns. I'm going to start off by using what have I got? Burnt umber, which is a sort of a lightish rusty brown. I'm going to start with that, and if I think it needs anything darker, I've also got a sepia ink, which is a darker sort of chocolatey brown. So I'm just going to start in this little corner here. Now I don't think I'm going to risk putting any more ink on this one. Can you see that? I've actually got some darker brown here and some more of the rusty brown here. Now I think I'm going to leave it at that, I think. Yeah, I'm just looking. Don't want to. Yeah, I am going to leave it because I do risk spoiling it again. So you can see you have to be quite cautious here, very cautious. So I'm going to leave that to dry overnight now, and then we can come back and see what it looks like. I've left this overnight. It's now completely dry, and I've taken the cling film off. As you can see, I've got some quite nice textures in here. I'll hold it up to the camera in a minute, but along here I've got some lovely sort of textures appearing. This is where I've trickled the ink under the cling film. Hopefully you can see these lovely sort of marks that I've got here, which are very nice. I'm quite pleased with those. So what I need to do now is think what I'm going to do next. So it looks quite nice as it is, but I think I could make it better. So got several options. I think I need to darken off this area a little bit, and maybe here, and here. Another option is I could actually, where I've got these lighter areas, I could actually lift out a little bit of paint and actually make some areas slightly lighter, so it's almost like mist rising up from behind the hillside. So several different options there. And one thing I found very useful, which I think you'll probably might find helpful too, is if you do a photocopy of your artwork, I usually do several. What you can then do, you can then try different options out on your photocopy to see what's going to work before actually going ahead and sort of committing yourself to doing it on the painting. I find that actually works quite well, and it's something I'm definitely going to use when we do it in the last session, when we come to sort of build up another different sort of landscape. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to work on my photocopies and decide which option I like the best, and then I'm going to work on this and I'm going to get back to you. Here are my two photocopies that I've worked over the top of, so that you can see it's quite useful. You can try different things out without before actually going ahead on your painting. So here I've darkened off some areas to make the rocks a bit more prominent. I'm using burnt umber brown, and here I've actually darkened off a couple of areas but lifted out quite a lot of paint with a scrumbling sort of dry brush, lifting with tissue, just to create a sort of more of a misty effect. I'm just going to say, obviously on this, because this is just a photocopy, I haven't been able to lift the paint out. You might just think, but I've actually added a little bit of white in there to give me the similar effect on the photocopy, but you get the idea. Okay. So this is my painting all finished. I haven't done a huge amount to it. It took me about an hour, or just over an hour actually. I've just put a little bit of darker brown burnt umber paint on a few areas, sort of here, a little bit here, and lifted out some paint with a damp brush and a tissue to create a sort of a misty effect, which I'm quite pleased with. I think that's just all it needed. I didn't want to do too much to it, but it just tidied it up a little bit. This is the original, that's the photocopy of the original, and that's what it looks like now, which I think it has improved it. And this is a just reminder of a couple of others that I did previously. Slightly different techniques. This one was using 2 different pieces of cling film on 2 pieces of land here. This was done using rose madder and cobalt blue, and I've dripped a little bit of brown ink underneath. And this one was done using the same colours as I used on the demonstration today, but just putting cling film on this front section. And I actually dripped white, either white, you can use white ink or white gouache underneath the cling film a little bit to give it more of a frosty, snowy feel. Okay, so I hope you have a bit of fun with this technique. Don't get too bogged down with it. I mean, you can simplify it. I've actually created a landscape with sort of a few areas of interest. You know, you could just, if you just put cling film on the front section to simplify it for yourself, it'd still be very effective. I just wanted to put it on both to show you the different options. Okay, so have fun, and I really look forward to seeing what you're going to do with this. And I'm now going to show you what we're going to be doing in the next session. So for session number 3, we're going to use similar techniques, but create a sort of a meadow feel, sort of flowery meadow. So we're going to be using cling film and trying to get creases running up this way to create sort of grassy feel, and then also using very small pieces of cling film to put on to create textures on the flowers. Okay, this is slightly more a simplified version where I haven't got all the little stems in there, and you just do one flower. So if you think that might look a little bit too complicated, you can do a slightly simpler version. All right, so I look forward to seeing what you've done, and I will talk to you soon.